The dramatic rescue of 12 children and their coach trapped for almost 2 weeks in a cave in Thailand appears to be a straightforward storyline, complete with a beginning, a middle, and an end. But in this era of all things Trump, some media types figured out a way to conflate the rescue story with that of immigrant children separated from their parents at the border.
Early on, it seemed hopeless.
The frantic search for 12 young soccer players and their coach trapped in a cave complex in Thailand is in its 6th day.
It was about then when the national news media really started focusing on the story of the lost boys and their soccer coach.
Hopefully the Navy can help bring a miracle to those boys and their families.
Once the boys were discovered alive, the drama ramped up. The media set up camp outside the cave, giving viewers a blow-by-blow of the 4-day-long rescue.
The last 4 boys and their coach were rescued today.
But rather than a sigh of relief, some opinion writers started hand-wringing, like this from the Philadelphia Inquirer. How do we square the daring rescue of children in Chiang Rai with news that the U.S. government returned a 14-month-old baby to her mother at the Mexican border after 85 days in custody? And this, why does this tragedy capture the world's attention when more long-term issues such as children in detention don't to the same extent? It's not a new question.
Dan, it looks like they're getting ready to bring something up from the hole.
Back in 1987, the nation was captivated by a 58-hour drama, the rescue of 18-month-old Jessica McClure from a Texas well.
Here she comes. There's clapping.
That story put CNN on the map as the network never cut away, not even to focus on a raging debate over NAFTA. Unlike the reuniting of immigrant children, the McClure and Thai cave boys have something in common.
It's a race against time.
In other words, a matter of life and death.
I felt very defensive, frankly, at the coverage of this. I've never seen a story like this. Maybe even the Chilean miners, but they were adults. These were very young children. There's the incredible drama associated with this. And I always say this when you're putting together a newscast. Yeah, there are either-ors, but the news gets covered and you push things down. I even heard a story last week about, everybody always brings up the Flint, Michigan water story. Oh, and they've still got bad water in Flint. I even heard a story about that. No, it wasn't the top of the newscast, and it wasn't, but I mean, I think it was hard to, CNN and some of the others went wall to wall, but you know, they have so much time to fill anyway. And the network coverage was excellent. And the New York Times today, by the way, they had the rescue story all wrong. The rescue was completely different from what everybody said. I was still interested in. They came out on skids. Not one child swam. They were out on these little floating devices called skids. I mean, it's just, and the Thai government is very clever too. They actually contributed to the mystery factor in this by not releasing any data, names, or anything like that. Even now, keeping those kids in the hospital. So.
I think it's an easy mistake to make, to think that if people weren't watching this rescue, that instead they would all be, I don't know, studying microeconomics. that it would have been the space would have been filled with good, hearty policy journalism. Realistically, we live in an environment where people have an enormous amount of choice in the kind of news that they want to bring in. Right? If you don't want to get your news by watching 2 hours of cable news coverage live from Thailand, you have plenty of other options. So I think international reporting more broadly does a lot of good things. It can inform policy decisions, it can inform political decisions. But one thing it does really well is also communicate a common sense of humanity. That there are people on the other side of the world who don't look like you, who don't have names that sound like yours, but they nonetheless have the same sort of emotional resonance. You can look at them and think of your own child. And I thought this story actually accomplished a lot in doing that.
Yeah, just to piggyback on your point, I think one of the things that made the story so appealing, first off, it's an elementally fascinating story about 12 kids who can't swim stuck in a cave where they might need to swim to safety or die, which is inherently interesting. But it also, unlike the border detention story, was not a political story. And I think a lot of people, myself included, have felt exhausted by the continual coverage of a number of self-generated crises created by the Trump administration. It's nice to take a break from that on occasion, and it's nice to follow a story that doesn't automatically break down along partisan lines in terms of
and it's going to end one way or the other. It was going to end one way or the other, badly or well.
That's right. And I think that for those who are complaining that the Thai rescue story got too much attention, I actually disagree that we dropped the ball on the border story. I think that attention remained focused on that, and it's still being focused on that. And I don't think that the media is going to drop that until there's been some resolution of that. So, this is a made-for-TV story. There was nothing wrong with going wall to wall with this for a few days, and now it's wrapped up, it's over,
almost.
we're getting some great follow-ups, and now we get back to
Unanimous?
the usual.
I have to say a couple things. First of all, I thought that the most clever and wonderful coverage I saw actually made a connection between the two stories. So we had a lot of stories about the details of the boys in the cave, which was, all many of us wanted to know about. But they also made the connection to those kids who were still in cages that we don't know their names. And that what did that mean? That there was some gathering around these kids and it wasn't the same kind of gathering around the other kids. There was an emotional resonance that I think people got even more when done well, and it was done well. By the way, my CBS people told me a long time ago they were on skids. Now,
Yeah,
yes,
no,
they
I know.
did.
No, I
So
believe
I didn't
that.
wait
I
for the
believe
New
it.
York Times. They were on
the first
top
time
of
I saw
it.
it,
They
yeah.
were really.
Yeah.
So and to Adam's point, you wanted a little bit of a relief from some relentless policy making kind of stuff, but at the same time, that emotional connection between the two stories was made, and the story never dropped as I saw it.
I agree. All right.
Yeah.